Hey guys, and welcome back to another Lost Bits video right here on TetraBitGaming, the series where we explore the unused, altered, and unseen content in gaming. Today we are checking out a game that's been long requested to be covered on this series, Disney's Epic Mickey for the Wii. And what better time to make this video than the same week as the rebrushed version of the game releasing. In this video, we'll be diving into some pre-release stuff, a few unused graphics and videos, as well as my favorite, a whole bunch of unused test levels that are left over in the game. So grab a brush and paint that like button below, it's time to check out some Epic Mickey Lost Bits. Alright, so to start things off here, let's have a brief look at some pre-release aspects of Epic Mickey where originally it was actually quite a bit different. So first off, the earliest known tangible work done on Epic Mickey was sometime around 2005 or 2006, and originally, before eventually being developed by Junction Point Studios, work on the game was actually started by dev studio High Impact Games, who went on to develop other games including some Ratchet & Clank games, as well as helped out with the Wii port of the original Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. Anyways, Lloyd Murphy, who appears to have been the lead artist for the original Epic Mickey project, has actually shared some art and render assets that seem to show that the game originally had a much different visual style. And apparently, there were also plans for the game to have taken on a much more sketch-like and black and white style of Disney's earliest cartoons, instead of the much more colorful style that we eventually ended up getting. Then after this, in 2007, around 3 years before the game was released, an early pitch video was made for Disney on behalf of Junction Point Studios as a proof of concept. And this also appears to show quite a bit of a different story for the game. Mickey is seen having all of his ink removed, and this is apparently after his ink mixed with that of Blot that he's seen fighting as he falls through a tunnel of sketches. And apparently, having Mickey's ink mixed with that of Blot would have given him the side effects of new ink moves like surfing on it, making bounce pads, a wingsuit, as well as the ability to conjure up objects, which as you can see would come at the cost of some of Mickey's ink and more. Although I can't say I'm all too crazy about Mickey's design in this pitch, the areas, the moves, and ink system all seem pretty cool. Then after this, in 2009, a small and very early demo of the game was made to show off to Game Informer magazine, and this was actually the first time that the game was revealed to the public. And apparently, showing it off to Game Informer was the entire point of making this demo, as according to the game's lead designer, there still weren't any proper levels that were developed around this time. Anyways, the multi-page article in the magazine goes over various planned aspects for the game and shows off a bunch of early screenshots, concept art, as well as some character renders. And I guess unsurprisingly enough, there are a few things from this demo build that didn't end up making it to the final release version of the game, including gremlins named Jamface and Barry, as well as, more notably, a scrapped morality or karma system, where depending on Mickey's actions, such as saving or not saving gremlins, or erasing too much of the world, Mickey would slowly become either the hero or the scrapper. And based on the text in this article, it seems like taking the scrapper route would also double as a hard mode of sorts, as it would apparently make some platforming more difficult. The renders in this article also show that Mickey's appearance would change depending on which path the player would take, with the scrapper version having darker pants and shoes as well as a scowl, while the hero version would have lighter pants, golden gloves, and would look far less angry. Furthermore, in some of these screenshots in this article, we can also see different looking heads-up display assets for Mickey's health meter. And going with the scrapped karma system, it looks like this too would change depending on Mickey's status. Going from this one, I guess if on the hero path, to this different, devious looking one when playing as a scrapper, where the red circle health points can be seen changed to green squares as well. Although I guess this system was kind of reworked into the Guardian meter seen under Mickey's health bar, it's certainly not the same. And honestly, this original plan seems like it would have been a really cool mechanic that would have offered some more depth to the player's choices. So I think it's too bad that it didn't make the cut in the final game. Now for a while, there wasn't any known footage of this demo build, but that was until DigiFest of 2012 rolled around. And there, a short clip of the game was shown off in what appears to have been the same demo build, if not one that was made around the same time. And while in action, a few more things could be noted that didn't make the final cut, including the lampposts coming to life as Mickey approaches them, and Mickey himself leaving behind footprints as he runs around. And now moving on to the actual release version of Epic Mickey, first we have a few unused graphics that are left over in the game. The first of these is an early loading screen that's believed to perhaps have been meant for an earlier demo build of the game, as here we can see a quick overview of the game's controls using the Wii Remote and Nunchuck. After that, there's this really basic sprite of what appears to be Mickey's arm, titled Mickey Radial Menu Debug. And as the name implies, it's very likely that this was used for a radial debug menu. And although there are remnants of another non-functional debug menu left over in the game, unfortunately this radial debug menu was removed, and as such, this pointer never gets used here. We can, however, see it in action in Epic Mickey 2. As for that game, there are actually a few pre-release builds that have been publicly dumped in which the debug menu is functional, and yeah, we can actually see this graphic there too. Then next up, we have an early placeholder title screen, where not only can we see it looking completely different than the one that's used in the final cut with the Mickey logo of paint here being seemingly washed away, but we can also see an early logo for the game's title, as well as, well, an early title for the game too, where it was apparently going with the title of Epic Mickey and Oswald. And then lastly, for the unused graphics here, we have my favorite kind of placeholder, the kind that lets you know exactly what it is. And this one, left over unused in this game, does just that. Now moving on to the unused stuff that moves, we actually have a few unused video files that are left over in the game too. The first of these isn't anything crazy, as it's just the ESRB splash screen for the game that was apparently used for E3, as it's quite literally titled ESRB for E3, so yeah, pretty straightforward there. And then additionally, there are several placeholder videos for, I guess, describing how various sketch abilities would work. And we have these for the Anvil sketch, TV, as well as the Watch sketch. And interestingly, there are also these placeholder videos for two scrapped sketches left over in the files as well. One for a fireworks sketch, which would scare off enemies as well as reveal secrets, and then there's also a balloon sketch, which seemingly would lift Mickey and surrounding enemies into the air. And although this balloon sketch did get scrapped from this game, it looks like it ended up getting reworked into the fairy sketch seen in Epic Mickey 2, as it seems to have functioned very similarly. And as you've probably noticed, these videos don't show much for the unused sketches, so how do we know what they would have done, you might be asking? Well, also left over unused in Epic Mickey here are assets for a scrapped sketch vending machine, and I'll probably go over this in a bit more depth in a follow-up video, but among the assets for the machine are cards for each of the sketches, which have a brief explanation of their function, and yeah, these also exist for the scrapped fireworks and balloon sketches as well. Then next, for the unused audio side of things, although not present in the final cut of the game, there exists a full version of the background music that was used in early gameplay trailers before the game released, and this is believed to have been an early version of Epic Mickey's main theme. Let's give it a quick listen. And now, to wrap things up for this video here, if you've been around the channel for a while, you know I love me my test maps. So next up, let's go through the numerous test levels that are left over unused in Epic Mickey. There are also a few unused early versions of maps left over in the game that were used in older demo builds, but I might save those for a future video sometime. Anyways, although some of these test maps are pretty empty, most of them offer quite a few interesting things to ooh and ah at, so let's jump on in. First, we got SH Lighting Test, and here we got a whole ton of objects and effects to check out. And as the level name explicitly reveals, this stage was used to test lighting effects, go figure. First, on the left here, we have this large waterfall of thinner that unloads as you approach it, which is like the opposite of what we usually see with stuff getting culled out when the player is far enough away. Anyways, the thinner here appears to be animated, and if you do deload it, it will actually reappear, seemingly if you look away for long enough. Then just behind where Mickey loads into this level, this steeple arch thing can be seen with a portal looking thing that unfortunately has no function, as well as a ray of light up top. Then we have this screen that's normally used in the game for transporting between levels, but instead of having some cartoon or something, this one just has magenta. There's this lone growth of flowers here, and then in the middle area we got various effects, including some lit up smoke, some inky smoke, an invisible gas or something with a block behind it to, I guess, test how the effect would change the block's appearance. There's some regular looking smoke with a gem behind it that can be removed with thinner and painted back. Then there's a goopy looking smoke effect that uses what appears to be smiley faces as its texture. Then we have some targets, a Redditor's worst nightmare, some sparkles that cycle through colors, and lastly some more regular smoke. Then behind these effects we have a spinning box, one with its textures getting like stretched down, which honestly makes it look kind of unsettling. There's a third one here just floating near this plane, which seems to perhaps be a test for the effect of windows reflecting light. Then to the left here we have various objects, including a pair of semi-transparent cubes with some greening along the edges. We got a cube with a sphere in it, and then we also have this regular dodecahedron and sphere looking thing here, which appear to both distort what's seen behind and I guess within them. And with these, we can mess with Mickey as well. And interestingly, unlike every other object so far, these actually seem to display a reflection of surrounding objects as well. What I also found interesting is that looking through these last two objects appears to hide any other effects like the cubes around the area, Madame Leona's orb in the back there, the smoke effects, and even this waterfall to our left. And yeah, I just thought this was really cool to see here. And then in the back section here, we have a pair of cubes going through their own animation of disappearing. There's this glowing cylinder, and like I mentioned earlier, Madame Leona from Disney's Haunted Mansion is chilling in the back here with a blank stare. Then way in the back, there's this chunk of level geometry and this building thing that's quite hard to see here because it's so dark. But don't worry, we'll see this better lit in several of the other test levels too. Overall, this was a pretty sweet little test room, and yeah, it was really cool to just see all the different effects here. Then moving on, next we have Jeff Tse Test Level, also known as Jeff Tse's Particle Zoo. And as that name implies, here we have a test of various particle effects. And yeah, you'll also probably notice that Mickey is completely inked out here as well. Now going quick here, we have various things like these little pink floating squares near where you spawn in this level. There's a large ink explosion that occurs every few seconds, which looks to be the explosion from the Spladoosh enemies. We got a spinning dust loop, a pair of goopy green aggressive bubbling effects, including one that just seems to use some green squares for some of the textures. There's a rocky explosion, some dust or something getting sucked up. And then there's this animation of blue sparkles exploding into some Mickey Mouse heads. Towards the back, we can see the building set piece that I mentioned from the last room. And then towards the right, we have a dark textureless area that appears to be some sort of graveyard, akin to something seen in Bog Easy or outside the Lonesome Manor. There don't seem to be any effects tested in this section, but just thought this was pretty cool to see here. And then on the other side of this area, there looks to be a duplicate model of the middle section, but this time with only one effect here. And this looks to be the alerted effect for the seer enemies, and yeah, that's basically it for this side. Next we got Eve Colvin Zoo, and this brings us to a similar area, but with much less to see here. Basically, there's just one effect, and it's this like rocky ground explosion. And even less interesting, Jimmy AVA Test takes us to the same area again, but this time there doesn't appear to be anything else here at all. And we've seen this same area a lot by this point, so I should probably mention that this appears to be another leftover from an early demo build, as we can see what appears to be the same area, albeit a lot more fleshed out in this screenshot. And as someone who's been on the It's a Small World ride dozens of times, this definitely seems to be based on that ride, and as such was probably meant for somewhere in the Gremlin Village section of the game. Then, moving on to AVA particle tests, we of course have particle testing going on here. And these include a dark, goopy gust sphere, a gooping glob of thinner, a big blue cylindrical beam thing, as well as two windows here, with one of them containing a little fire generating some smoke. Then moving on, we have EB Village Test, and it sure is a village test alright, with its large grassy plain and one small building here. Yeah, that's about it. And if you're curious like I was, no, there's nothing interesting inside of the building either. Then next is a really cool test area listed simply as Mickey Arcade. And this appears to be a very early blockout map for testing the 2.5D platforming sections in the game. Although the collision can be sometimes quite janky here, for a test map it's pretty dang big and robust, featuring stuff like blocks that can be removed with thinner, an enemy object that fires out projectiles, blocks that fall away, and even a flippin' boss fight. That's right, here you go up against Sphere in Box, as it uses a targeting reticle to blast away thinner projectiles at Mickey that can also dissolve certain blocks as the level starts auto-scrolling downwards. Now this battle is unfortunately incomplete, as you get to a point where you just get stuck here, and even if you manage to drop down a little lower, yeah, that's about where things end. Although obviously this level is incredibly basic, I honestly had a pretty fun time playing through it, and I kinda dig the basic geometry style of it. Then after that, we have JM Test 1, and unfortunately for us, this level doesn't seem to have working collision, so as soon as we spawn, we just fall right through and into the void below. And although we can't move around here normally, if we pause the game right as soon as we spawn in, we can at the very least get a good look at the area to see that it looks to be another village test of sorts. And hey, at least we got more than just one building here this time too. Then next is Common FX Zoo, and this test map threw me all the way back to the Super Mario Sunshine and Wind Waker test maps, which I covered back at the start of making the series with the tiles on the floor here. These 8 m by 8 m tiles were used as a reference to Mickey's size, and yeah, Mickey's size is pretty spot on here. Anyways, back to the main attractions of this level, we have various effects again, this time nicely labeled in fact with these blocks. So first, there's this big puddle of thinner that appears magenta for some reason instead of green, and we can see various gassy and gloopy thinner effects going on top of it. Then other effects here include some for dust, steam, smoke in both a lighter and darker variety, sparking effects of various sizes, fire, and then in the back corners of this test level, we got various other miscellaneous effects, many of which we've already seen in previous test levels like the ink explosion and thinner gloops. But there are also many that we haven't seen yet, like some more sparking and explosion effects and more. Yeah, there's just a lot going on in this test map, and I'm all for it. Then moving on, we have BT Shader Test, and here we start in a beach-like area reminiscent of Ventureland. And we spawn near an untextured Scurvy Pat who, although has an A button prompt that appears when you get close to him, you can't actually interact with him or anything. Then behind him, we got a plant, as well as several little cubes here, with the rightmost one being reflective, the one beside it seemingly being a shadow effect, and then the middle being a cube with a shadow effect applied to it. And then behind this area, we have a large backdrop with various layers of trees and plants and such. And then the larger part of this area features a big building textured with these Disney Interactive Studios graphing paper tiles. And this building looks to actually be an early version of the train station building from Mean Street, as it was seen in some early screenshots of the game in a pre-release version that was likely made sometime around the Game Informer demo that we went over earlier. And with this version, notably the sides aren't as curved and the clock tower is more basic looking. And then, in front of this building, we got some small level chunks that we can still hop up to, but yeah, they're not anything crazy. Overall, a cool little room. Then last but absolutely not least, we have by far the biggest unused test map left over in the game, referred to as Building Standards, or Jeff M's test level. And there is just a lot here, including various objects, either stationary or spinning, as well as several tickets. Then around the whole map, we can see various set pieces labeled, like these vertical CSG things like icing or shells that seem to have maximum and minimum sizes. But unfortunately, I have no clue what these could be. And much like other test areas I've covered on this series over the years, here we have several obstacles that I guess were used to test how Mickey controls, including stairs, some ramps at different angles, there are like doors of different sizes here, various chunks that can be dissolved with thinner, including this bridge section here. We got these sections that seem to label the distance of various types of jumps, like a standard jump, a difficult jump, as well as a paint jump. Then we have an 8-meter label for a horizontal blocker, and then a 5.5-meter minimum vertical blocker here, and a whole lot more. Now, as you've been seeing, unfortunately, in the state in which it's left over in this game, everything is untextured, making it pretty dang hard to see most things here, but I guess seeing it like this is still better than nothing. Then additionally, moving forward near where you first spawn in towards this rod thing will actually cause a short cutscene to play, in which the camera will slowly pan right near these doorway things. And that's not the only trigger here, as close by there's a second one that activates a short cutscene introducing a slobber enemy, and then yeah, this also sets up a battle against it too. This test level is honestly awesome to just run and mess around in, as well as zip the camera around to look at it from afar and up close. It's just really cool to see all the different set pieces here used for testing. But yeah, I just wish it was textured and had lighting, so things were at least a bit more visible. In any case though, this level is still definitely up there on the list of the most interesting test rooms that I've come across while making this series. And my friends, we'll wrap it up there for this first video on Epic Mickey, and I hope you enjoyed. If you did, there's definitely more stuff to cover for this game, so let me know with your comments and likes below, and I might revisit it as well as its sequel in the future. But until then, check out some of my other Lost Bits videos, and be sure to subscribe to the channel to find your way back here in the future. Also, a big shout out to Pleasant Gradient, as well as a bunch of the members at the Function Point Discord for helping making this video possible. And as always, thank you all so much for stopping by today, and I will see you in a bit.